Coming to paperback and e-readers, Isis Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Isis Dark Incubus at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Historical Men in Crisis. One of my viewers wanted me to do a follow-up video to talk about a historical man in crisis I discussed in a previous video. Now, in a previous video I talked about Craig Titus, an American bodybuilder who was convicted of second-degree murder for the murder of his assistant, Melissa James, who he was having an affair with. And in that video, I talked about how Craig Titus wound up on the road to becoming a man in crisis due to his feelings of inferiority that started when he was young in high school because he felt that he was too small at 5'6" tall, and because he felt he was too short to be the kind of man that he wanted to be. This basically made it where he felt like he had extremely low self-esteem regarding himself and his image. Now, Craig Titus was a guy who was playing high school football, but quit playing high school football because he lacked confidence as related to his size, because at 5'6" tall, he thought he wasn't big enough to play football. And because he felt like he wasn't big enough to play football, he started to wrestle in high school and then eventually started working out and started participating in bodybuilding. And as he saw results from his muscles starting to grow as related to bodybuilding, and he started to gain a little bit of confidence. However, it wasn't enough to really help develop the confidence to overcome his feelings of inferiority, because while he won the 1988 Houston Bodybuilding Championships, he still didn't feel that confidence, and because he didn't feel that confidence, he started to go out and start taking drugs as he was competing in bodybuilding competitions. And as he was participating in these bodybuilding competitions, he then was out here not only taking controlled substances, he was also distributing drugs like ecstasy, and wound up getting arrested and wound up being sentenced to 16 months of house arrest with an electronic anklet. And then after getting released from that sentence in 1996, I believe, he wound up getting, in July 1997, sentenced to 21 months in prison for violating his probation by taking steroids. And as he was in this prison, he basically was married to a woman, and eventually he had two twins. He had fraternal twins where his son died of SIDS within the first year, and his daughter survived to adulthood, but Titus and his wife wound up divorcing, and he continued to go on with trying to compete in bodybuilding competitions, and eventually wound up remarrying to Kelly Ryan, a fitness woman who was into bodybuilding, and they got to know each other through competitions, and eventually, again, Craig Titus's insecurities would continue to get the better of him, undermining his success. I mean, Craig Titus had all the abilities to make himself successful. Unfortunately, because he had extremely low self-esteem and low self-worth, because he thought he was short, he wound up coming up short in life, because every time he would get towards the road to success, he would undermine himself by looking to try to escape dealing with this issue of being short by doing things like taking drugs or going out here and participating in dysfunctional behaviors. And this is what led to him, his whole life, never really working out the way it should have worked. And as he married Kelly Ryan, his insecurities further got the better of him. Even though they were living in a nice home in Southern California, what happened with Craig Titus was he wound up getting involved in an affair with his assistant, 28-year-old Melissa James. And as he got involved with this affair, what he wanted to do was try to find a way to get out of that affair by making his world smooth. And his attempts to make his world smooth so that people wouldn't know about the affair was to go and murder Melissa James. And then after he got his wife to help him murder Melissa James, They then put her body inside the back of a Jaguar, put it out in the Las Vegas desert, and set it on fire. And this was his way of looking to try to escape the affair that he had and people finding about the affair and it reflecting badly on his character. So what Craig Titus wanted to do with this murder was try to make his world smooth and make his world better. But unfortunately, as he participated in this murder, eventually people found out about the body of Melissa James, and even though Craig Titus would look to move to another state, I believe he wanted to move to Massachusetts, eventually what happened was police managed to find Craig Titus, and eventually Craig Titus was arrested, and he was charged with the murder of Melissa James along with his wife. And as he was charged with that murder, he eventually wound up pleading guilty because the evidence was so overwhelming. And since the evidence was so overwhelming as related to the case of Craig Titus, he then wound up in prison, sentenced to 55, almost 21 to 55 years in prison, and he's been there ever since. And even though his wife got out of jail and eventually wound up remarrying, Craig Titus is still inside of that prison, and recently he was given a chance at parole. However, he didn't get that chance of parole. His parole was denied, and that's what the viewer wanted me to talk about, how his parole was denied. And his parole was basically denied because when it came to Craig Titus, he basically showed no remorse for murdering Melissa James. And beta males, again, have a hard time showing remorse because they believe the world revolves around them and only them. And because they want to keep their world smooth, these men will not admit to doing wrong. They will not admit to what they have done wrong. And sadly, in the case of Craig Titus, he went from being a bodybuilder with a strong body to becoming a frail older man. And that older man is one of those men that basically fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And Craig Titus has gone from being a man who could have had great success as a bodybuilder to winding up becoming a man who's going to possibly live the rest of his life in prison, going to wind up living the rest of his life in prison, having to continue to deal with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles. And while his wife is remarried and now with another man, he's in a penitentiary dealing with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, who will continue to trade him for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, Taster's Choice coffee, off-brand lemon lime drink, off-brand grape drink, off-brand orange drink, off-brand fruit punch, prison chips, Hunt snack pack puddings, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies, Snyder's pretzels, and all of the other items on the commissary. And Craig Titus will go from a guy who had a strong body to being a guy who's going to be broken down as Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles go and stuff the carbon robs in the front side and the back side. And then Mr. Sprinkles will step in and finish him off with a hot load of special sauce on the front side and the back side, then call up the guys of Cell Block D to come in and check out the things as related to his handiwork when he splits the cheeks open and shows everybody his backside looking like the inside of a glazed donut. And after that ignominious affair, what will happen to Craig Titus is he will still have to wash the skid marks out of the drawers of Mr. Sprinkles and with a toothbrush, and that is the fate that is going to happen to Craig Titus, because since he can't get parole, he's basically going to wind up spending the rest of his life in prison, spend the rest of his life inside of this penitentiary, all because he just did not have the confidence to accept that at 5'6" tall, which is not really that short at all, he could still be a man and having the confidence to be the man that he wanted. But instead of him having that confidence to be the man that he wanted, sadly what happened to Craig Titus is he's wound up becoming a man in crisis, a man in crisis who will possibly wind up dying in prison because he refuses to continue to show remorse for the murder of Melissa James, and again, wouldn't be in this situation if he just had enough self-confidence to say, you know what, I'm a short guy, but I'm going to be the man that I want to be. And that's the way a man has to be. You have to have confidence in yourself. But sadly, because Craig Titus didn't have confidence in himself, he wound up looking to destroy the life of Melissa James because he wanted to maintain a smooth world. But now his life is going to wind up ending up really rough inside of that penitentiary. It's going to wind up ending up rough because since his parole was denied, as related to participating in this murder, he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life, and he's going to be there as a man in crisis. Now, this was a video requested by a viewer, and if you want to request a video, you can send a donation of a minimum of $15 to the Cash App, not the Super Chat. You can send to the Cash App or the PayPal, and if I know something about that subject, I will make that video for you. And if you want to learn why men like Craig Titus wind up going on the road from being the man on a road to success to becoming a man in crisis, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and Target. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in digital format at Amazon.com, Google Play, Draft to Digital, and other digital booksellers, or pick up your paperback copy on May 24th. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.